Hello, YouTube. Welcome to the show, podcast, whatever you want to call it. My name is Adam. I'm an Iowa basketball fan, and this is something I've wanted to do for going back a couple years ago, around 4 or 5 years ago. I had this thing in my mind to do my own thing for Iowa basketball. I didn't know if it was going to come in a vlog format, but it was something that I thought maybe I could potentially do. And so what I want to do with this is do a post-game recap of sorts, where I take each game that I'm able to see in person, on TV, or in streaming, like Peacock or whatever, and just discuss anything that I think is interesting about the game, any talking points that or questions I might have going forward. As I just want to talk basketball, and this was something I would have done anyway, and with whomever. So I figure, why not just do it? It'll be fun. So moving that aside, moving on to the game, because that's what we all care about. That's what I want to talk about. That's what people want to hear. So, as you can tell from the title, today we're going to be discussing the crossover Kinnick Exhibition 1 DePaul. Man, it's such a cool event. It really is just so awesome. I don't know if I can do it justice, really. Yeah, it is. It's just so cool for so many reasons. From a basketball fan standpoint, a sports fan standpoint, a women's sports standpoint, like whatever you want to say, it's just so cool for so many reasons. It's something new. Hope they can do every year. Man, I can't do it justice. I don't feel like there's so many people who've got out great content covering this event that do it better justice than I do from an emotional standpoint. All I'll say is it's just awesome, and it was really cool to be a part of the crowd Sunday. It was really awesome. But moving on to the game. So DePaul is the opponent. Just setting the stage for the opponent. Kind of an interesting program and team. A coach who's been there 30 plus years, been highly successful, multiple Sweet 16s. It was kind of interesting to look at his resume. From the mid-2010s, during that period where like UConn was the American after the dissolution of the old Big East, it's like, wow, they owned this conference. 6 out of 7 first or tied for first place in the Big East, a really good basketball conference. So like, obviously a team that knows what they're doing, a coach who knows what he's doing, and a proud tradition. But at the same time, it's a team that's missed 2 of the past 3 tournaments. And they've lost their top 3 scorers, top 3 players in minutes, including an All-American candidate, Nisa Morrow. So there's a lot of questions coming in for DePaul. So it's hard to know what to expect from them coming to a game like this. So you don't really know in what ways they were really going to test Iowa and the questions you have for this Iowa women's basketball team. And yeah, I think they're an interesting team. I really like Anaya Peoples. She has a really good right to left crossover. She tested our players a couple times. She's a really fun player to watch. If you're DePaul fans, like I think you're going to like her. A lot of sizzle there. I say. But anyway, moving on, because this is for an Iowa basketball podcast. So I want to focus mainly on that team. So thinking about this game and just some of the observations I have, I'm going to start with defense, because to me that's probably the main sticking point generally for this program. The defense, the offense that had the defense generally. So just thinking about and I guess before I go any further, I don't think people need this clarified, but because of the weather situation, pretty much everything from a basketball standpoint should probably be taken with a grain of salt, particularly shooting-wise. I think you can evaluate tendencies, and there are certain things from a basketball standpoint, you can evaluate, like tendencies, like what kind of sets you're running, what are you trying to accomplish defensively, but like everything kind of needs to be kept in that mindset, like, oh, the weather, the sun's poking out at various points. I don't remember it affecting many players' shots. Weirdly enough, I don't remember anyone. There weren't I think most players were smart enough to not understand, I'm not going to shoot when I'm looking into the sun. But certainly the wind affected shots. I don't think if there's another Caitlin Clark airball this year, I think, I don't know, man. It's just not happening. Uh, but anyway, moving on. Focusing from a defensive standpoint for Iowa. Talking about tendencies, mostly man-to-man, 98%, I'd say. I only saw 2 possessions back-to-back where we played any zone defense. Start off with 1-3-1, guy deflection, then change to a 2-3, and then there was a foul. Both situations, the play didn't last 5 seconds, so you can't even read that much into it. You just saw Iowa was playing a really extended zone in both situations, which I don't think we have really the personnel for. So I think they're just experimenting, which naturally comes from a scrimmage. It's mostly just like, hey, trying stuff out pretty much. And that came during that point in time when we were up like high 20s points wise. And I think we were experimenting with different looks offensively and defensively, experimenting with different press breaks, different defenses, so on. But yeah, in terms of man-to-man defense, since that's the bulk we played, pretty vanilla, I'd say. In our ball screen coverage, pretty much played exclusively drop, and alongside that, we generally went under screens. Which again, when you think about it, that makes sense given the weather conditions. Jump shooting was going to be not good for either team. Regardless, it just wasn't going to be good. It's kind of interesting, though, DePaul's approach. And I think DePaul's approach against that defense makes sense because, like, DePaul settled for a lot of shots, which makes sense given the way I was playing. Like, I was, again, when you go under the screen and play drop coverage, you're pretty much just daring the team to shoot it. And DePaul, like, did what you're supposed to do, is take what the defense gives you, but at the same time, it's like, the situation wasn't in their favor at all. But even saying that, like, I don't know, they shot 10 more three-point attempts, and it's not even just three-point attempts. They also shot a lot of mid-range twos, and that's not something the Hawkeye Sports box score tracks. Doesn't track whether the 2-point shots are at the rim or mid-range. But like you can tell, it's like, man, they shot so many more mid-range twos than Iowa did. And that's kind of expected because Lisa, if you take the time to listen to Lisa Bluter on the radio post-game as they're driving back from the game or whatever, you can tell, like, she's been big into analytics. She'll criticize players if they take too many mid-range twos. So I didn't expect Iowa to take a lot of those kind of shots, but, like, not really good shot selection for DePaul. But again, I think it's a scrimmage. You can't really worry too much about it. I don't know if DePaul was necessarily, like, trying to win from that standpoint. I think they were just trying to run how they would in a normal situation when the weather isn't a factor. But unfortunately, they found a situation where it was, and it really hindered their offense because they were way too reliant on just jump shots in general. I think Iowa had a 60 to 32 advantage in points in the paint, and it showed. Iowa's approach to this game was pretty much the right approach from a standpoint of wanting to win the game, attack early and often, transition, off dribble, etc. All right. So just from a defensive standpoint, from an individual standpoint, I'm really happy with what I saw from Addie O'Grady and Hannah Stolke. That's the backbone of your defense, your front court. I really liked how Addie stayed vertical around the rim. I thought she was a presence in there. Even if she didn't always get blocked, I thought she was affecting the play. She got blown for a whistle for one time, and I don't know. I just don't agree. Women's basketball officials, it could be better. I'll say that. But I liked what I saw from Addison from a verticality standpoint, and also rebounding. She does a great job keeping the ball high. She doesn't bring the ball low. She's really fundamentally sound in that way. Hannah Stolke, the most naturally talented defender on this team. I think that goes without saying. Man, there was one possession where Magdalene was the main shooter from DePaul in this game, and she hit a couple. And there was one time when she had to rotate out on her, really got out on her well, really great contest, and forced a ball reverse. So the ball eventually came back, and Magdalene tried to beat her off the dribble. She got stonewalled, and she kept going. It's like, oh, girl, that's going to get rejected straight into the bleachers. And yeah, pretty much did. But yeah, Hannah Stolke's great on defense. Yeah, just great. I really like what I saw from those two in the front court. If I were to be a little nitpicky, there are a couple times when, okay, so you're playing drop coverage, you're going under screens. Again, you're pretty much telling the offense, we don't want you to get to the rim. But there were a couple times when we stayed in front of them, but at the same time, they just played bully ball with us and were able to just power their way to the rim, either get fouled or lay the ball in. Because some of our guards are still a little too skinny. So I think that would be one concern, is like, there's some improvements that can be had defensively from the guard position. I'm hopeful that the strength of the front court defensively can do some to override some of that. Because I feel like that's probably something that's going to need to happen this year. But anyway, so I think those are the main things I think defensively. So now transitioning to offense. I'm just thinking about how to. Caitlin Clark is just so good, man. It's just insane to watch her with the ball in her hands. I mean, and like, you kind of want the evolution of somebody. It's like you can always see the skill here, but like now it's just like, and you saw, I think that switch got flipped particularly last year. Where like she's just so ridiculously patient with it now. Like when she's texting her, it's like she's never out of control. She's always in control of it. And like as she's getting to her spots for either runners or getting to the rim, like it's just so good. She's just one of a kind. It's just amazing to watch her with the ball in her hands. Yeah, I think a question that I guess I kind of personally have is, how is that? What happens when she's off the floor? Which I think you're going to have some. You don't want to have her play like 38 minutes every single game in the Big Ten. You kind of want some games where maybe like, okay, 32 or 30 minutes just for a little spell. I think and you see in the box score, she's plus 20. We won by 22, so plus 2 when she's off the court. I don't know. There's some stagnation when she's off the court. I think Molly Davis had some moments, and she's probably going to have to be the person in that situation. I think she's capable, at least for that spot duty. There are a couple times they had Taylor McKay bring up the ball, and it was kind of robotic. I don't know. She's just not natural there, although she does have a great shot. I don't know if I like her bringing the ball up too much. It kind of feels like a little trouble potentially brewing, but at the same time, it's a scrimmage. You're mostly testing your players and what they're capable of in a game setting, knowing that it doesn't really matter. So I think they were just trying to see how that worked out. I have some hesitation if they try that again. I don't know how that would really work. Speaking of Caitlin, though, it's like it was really frustrating because like as DePaul was making that run near the end of the game, they were starting to get to like 11, 13, etc. Like that entire stretch was really frustrating because Caitlin understood what was needed to break the run. She was trying to get to the rim. She's trying to get layups, and she was getting to her spots, and she was just missing. Like it was a case of like it was $1 million move after $1 million move, and then just not making layups that she's going to make. So it doesn't really worry you too much. But yeah, it's kind of interesting because like you think of it's like, man, she had a 30-point triple-double, and like you know how competitive she is. She's probably thinking, man, I could have gotten 40 easily. Like she's really thinking that. But again, going back to what I said earlier about the approach to jump shooting, I was approached offensively early and often in transition, run the floor. Hannah, Addie, they give great effort running the floor. Sharon, I should throw her out too. throw a shout out to her. Don't throw her out. Don't do that, Adam. Throw a shout out to her. They'll do a really good job running the floor, which is what you need a game like this. You're attacking, trying to attack the rim, and they did exactly that. The consistency with which Hannah beats her player down the floor is just insane. She's so good there. From a half court standpoint, like, okay, if you're thinking about, because a big question coming this year is the replacement of Monica Sonano, great player, so many superlatives you can use to describe her. We don't have enough time for that. So there's going to be a big question about replacing her, and I think so in situations where we had straight post-ups, and there wasn't a whole lot of that in this game, we saw one dump-off pass, and they practiced this pregame where they catch the ball in the post, and a player cuts to the middle of the floor, and they have that little dump-off bounce pass. They practice that in their pregame. It was a great pass from, I think it was Sharon who had that pass. I want to make sure I have that right, I guess. I didn't rewatch the game. I'm just going based off of what I saw live. But it was a really good pass. It's good to see that. And we practiced that, so I'm sure they're all capable of making that pass. I think, thinking about Addison O'Grady, I saw her finish with the left hand a couple times. I like seeing that. I think you need that versatility, obviously. There was one kind of bad miss, but I think she was 2 for 3 or 2 for 4. I forget which. But I like seeing her finish with her left hand in the post. I don't think I saw enough. And I'm not saying I didn't see enough to think, like, oh gosh, she's good or not good. I just didn't see enough. There wasn't the volume in straight post-ups where I don't really think I can come to a conclusion whether she's at the point where she can replace Monica. That's really only something you're going to get over the next couple games. And that's something to keep an eye on. Where's Iowa in their post-up game? How comfortable is Addie there? Because you ideally want to have some outlet where Clark doesn't feel like she has to create everything. So yeah, I think that's just a to be determined. I think you could kind of maybe make some conclusion, but I think it's probably too early at this point to say anything. So I think during that stretch in late third quarter or fourth, where it was big lead, I think Iowa, both teams were kind of just like testing things out. DePaul was running their press, which would make sense in the game situation anyway, because they were down a lot of points. But I think they're mostly just like trying to test out what they're capable of. And Iowa was testing their different press breaks. It's interesting. So kind of something I want to do is I kind of want to draw some stuff out every now and again. Not often, because I think that could be a little time consuming, but a couple press breaks. I won't do anything for there. Although maybe I might do something later for something I saw. You saw a couple different looks. It was so fun. So I forget the exact timestamp, and someone probably remembers that better than I do. But the one set where press break where Caitlin just threw a baseball pass down the court and said, "Hannah, go get that girl." And it's like, it was crazy because you see the angle, like the DePaul player had a couple steps on her, and it just didn't matter. Hannah's got flamethrowers coming out of her shoes. It was like, whoa, girl, jeez. But that was so cool to see. That might have been my favorite play of the game. Well, not my favorite, my second favorite. We'll get to the favorite later. There was another press break where they did that, where Caitlin was the inbounder. Another player came out of bounds. She got the ball from Caitlin. Then Caitlin came back in to receive the pass. I don't know. I didn't really like that execution on that play from that standpoint because Caitlin ran like to the space where the other defender was. So I guess maybe I can illustrate it. So, just thinking about this. So, I mean, Caitlin's I'm bad at this. Caitlin's the inbounder here, and you see her like, okay, send the pass comes out of bounds, comes back in. What I don't like is Caitlin then proceeded to run across the face. But the problem with that is this defender is going with her, so she's running to where the other defender is, and now you're adding a second defender in on top of Caitlin's defender. It made things too congested. I think she probably wanted to stay on her end of the court and just box out her player. I would have given a better angle for pass. I forget who was the other player involved in the situation. I think it was either Kyler or Gabby, but don't quote them. I mean, it was so hard. It was hard to see some of the players' names, honestly, from the stands. It's kind of like, but yeah, they were experimenting with some different press break looks, and we won't go into every single one of them. That's just one I found interesting. A couple I found interesting. Again, from a shooting standpoint, Caitlin, I believe she made the first 3 threes, and no other player made another 3 until Taylor did in the fourth quarter, I believe. Either that was in the third quarter. But again, really no point overreacting to that. The only thing I might say from a shooting standpoint is, and this is another talking point coming in this year, is Hannah Stokey from the free throw line. And what, she was she 4 for 10? Yeah, 4 for 10 from the free throw line. And there's a stretch there where I believe she might have even made her first, second, then missed like 5 or 6 in a row, and then made her last 3, which is good to see. But like, I don't really want to evaluate the make or miss aspect to that because again, there's so many things going on here. Caitlin missed 5 free throws, including the air ball. I mean, you could probably set the Vegas over under at. You probably won't see Caitlin miss 5 free throws the entire first month of November. You might, but she might only miss like 6 or 7. Like, it's just you shouldn't really evaluate the make or miss aspect. But like, her release, even if up from the stands, a couple times her release the release is different, and that's a little disappointing to see, because like what you really want to see is that consistent release. And there was one time in particular where it was the first one she missed and the second one she made, and the first one's just like, and they just looked. If you just look at her release, it was just night and day. It's like you could tell in the first one's like, oh god, that's not good, and the second one's like, oh yeah, that's more like it. That was going in. Like, yep, it went in. So I think that's a little disappointing to see this not a consistent release at this point. But again, I don't really want to go too crazy in it yet because the night is still young, but I don't know if I would anticipate a super big jump in free throw shooting yet, although I'm hopeful I can see it. I'm hopeful she can find that consistency in the next couple months because she's probably going to have to iron up something here in the next month or so because as you get into the season, you're going to be focusing more and more on your opponents. It's going to be less about individual work. So hopefully she can make those strides over the next couple weeks. But really, not much to say about shooting for the most part. Now, one thing I kind of like, so this was near the end of the game. This is kind of just one play I want to talk about, just because I think this was, I haven't seen action like this, and there was probably 1 or 2 minutes left. I forget the exact timestamp, but it resulted in a Hannah Stokey layup. So going through the situation, you see Clark with the ball. So she passes the ball over to Molly Davis, and what she then did is she set a flex screen for Kate Martin, who did a flex cut along the baseline. And what I really liked about this is instead of doing what you normally do when you set a flex screen, which is go to the elbows, Caitlin then proceeded to flare out to the corner, and Molly gave her the ball back. And what I really like about this is it gets this side of the floor almost isolated, and allows Caitlin to work. And you can see the defense, their eyes looking at her the entire way. Obviously, there would be anyway, because she's an All-American, whatever superlative you want to use. She fits that bill because she is that girl. But anyway, because of all that tension, I love what I saw backside here. You see Kate as she's and this play, in theory, I guess Kate could also be an option here to receive the ball. I think it'd be kind of a weird position because from where Molly is right here, it'd be kind of a weird position to throw the ball to Kate. You would probably want the ball to be here if you were going to look to give Kate the ball because it's just a better passing angle. From this angle, it's not the best angle to get that ball to Kate. So I think this was pretty much a set for what happens here, which is Hannah Stolke using Kate to open herself up for a backdoor layup. I really like this action. It's a nice little set that I just saw. It's like, oh wow, I haven't seen a flex cut used like that before. Or this, it might have been a while since I've seen it. Yeah. Lisa draws up some great stuff. That's just one thing that stood out. I imagine there's stuff that flew over my head because I'm just some guy and Lisa's a Hall of Famer. But she does drop some good stuff, Lisa. And that's just one thing that I just kind of noticed like, ooh, I like that set. Now, the one thing I would say, I erased it, now I have to redraw it. So it's probably a set that like be hard to pull off. Like, because Addison O'Grady, we didn't have O'Grady or Goodman at this point. It was just Stolke as a 5. And that gives a spread out look, which leaves room in the paint for the back cut. It'd probably be harder to pull off this specific set. With O'Grady, although I guess one thing you could do is you can maybe set a cross screen instead of like having Kate set a back screen by the elbow. So you could have again Kate sends the ball over to Molly, and then she heads over here to set up a flex cut for Kate. But instead of going all the way through here to set a screen by the elbow, she can set a cross screen for O'Grady potentially come to the block, and that can turn to, and then as Caitlin receives the ball, then she can send it down to O'Grady and potentially get a quick layup coming off of that action. And that's, I guess, one little alteration we could do if we run our 2-post lineup. But the early look is probably not something we can do with our 2-post lineup just because the paint would be too constricted and that layup probably just wouldn't be open. But yeah, it's just kind of something that popped in my head. But anyway, oh wow, I've been talking for 28 minutes. That's crazy. So anyway, not much to say about this game. Again, a lot of caveats should be thrown in for a variety of reasons this game. Those are some of the interesting things I saw. So, thinking about... I guess one thing I wanted to do was I wanted to give a shout out to two different things. I wanted to, after I get talking about every game, what I want to do is give one award for the defensive player / hustler of the game. Whatever play I think really stood out in that way, and obviously the player of the game, game ball. Those are two things I want to just give out every game, just to shout out players who I really think stood out. I think for the defense / hustle player of the game, I think if you wanted to give it to O'Grady, I think you'd be more than justifying giving it to O'Grady. She really owned the boards. I really like. She always runs the floor really well. She gives great effort. I like how she stayed vertical and really affected a lot of shots around the rim. But I got to give it to Hannah. Just for that play alone, where like she just totally dusted that DePaul player in the press break. It's like, girl just yanks her back. It's like, that's my ball. That was so cool. But again, Hannah, just like Addie, she does a really great job running the floor. Several standout moments defensively. I'm really looking forward to seeing how she continues to grow this year. Even like the free throw things, okay, they're their own thing, but she does so much else to impact winning that you gotta love her. Although she did shoot one 3-point shot, didn't she? Which I don't know against a scrimmage. In scrimmage, you're going to try things you wouldn't try in a game necessarily, but it'd be interesting, I guess, to see if she would be willing to do that in a regular game. But I digress. A great performance for a variety of reasons, regardless of free throws. And the game ball, I mean, it's hard not to give it to Caitlin. I'm going to try not to give it to her every game. It's going to be hard because she's that good. But again, like, she really does impact so much of what we do. Again, I said she had a 30-point triple-double, and like, as she's competitive, she probably thinks to herself, like, I might make a couple more of those runners, layups that we all know she's capable of making. She could have a 40-point triple-double. And, that's the way her mind's thinking. But I'll give her the game ball for the 30-point triple-double. I think that warrants a game ball. So anyway, so one thing I also want to do, I want to preview the next game that I'm able to see, which, unfortunately, the next game I'll be able to see is the Virginia Tech game in Charlotte. The second Thursday in November, I forget the exact date. I was hoping to get a couple of tickets just for some of the bye games, so I would get a chance to see the girls in person and like make some observations in like kind of low stakes settings against like Clark College next Sunday. But Iowa women's basketball fans are wrenching that by selling out all season tickets. So I wasn't able to do what I've done the past couple years, which I get a handful of season tickets for a handful of games during the week, because generally those weekday games, men's or women's, Iowa or not, they generally don't sell out in college basketball. So I'm generally able to go to those weekday games, but not this year, which is a credit to the women's basketball fans, and it's great that they're supporting the women's team. So unfortunately, because the next time we'll be able to see them is in Charlotte, which is ironic because that's despite the fact that it's like the furthest trip for me, and like I don't live too far away from the arena. It's the one game I'm going to is all in Charlotte. It's like, how is that the only game I'm going to? Although I'm going to try and get tickets for the UNI game, but they haven't put single game tickets on their website. The Panthers have yet. I'm hopeful that they'll still be available, but those will probably sell out quick, knowing the way Iowa fans are going for this team. So anyway, the next preview is Virginia Tech, a team that was 14th, I think, in that preseason poll. Don't quote me at that, I don't remember. But a team that is coming off a Final Four appearance, had a breakthrough year last year. A really good year. Led LSU going into the fourth quarter of the Final Four before they gave a big fourth quarter to LSU to lose that game. But a really good team, but also an interesting team. A team that played 6 or 7 rotation players, but really only returns 3 of those players, but they're all really effective players. I think the big thing, if you're really, and this is going to be a big thing to look forward to if you're an Iowa basketball fan thinking about what's to look forward to. Elizabeth Kitley, a 6'6" center, the returning leading scorer for Virginia Tech. That's going to provide pretty much the exact kind of test that you want to see for Sharon, Addie, Hannah, and see what really they're capable of against a really high quality player. That's only 6'6". That's only an inch shorter than their Cardoso girl from South Carolina, and that girl felt at times like she could touch the sky with how tall she was. It's like, it's going to be a challenge, and it's one I think you got to look forward to. If you're just an Iowa fan, if you're the coaches, your players, like, you love that challenge. Another interesting thing, Georgia Amore, I think I'm saying that right. 3-point shooter, their second returning leading scorer from last year. It was kind of crazy to look at her box scores from last year. Is the last 4 games that Virginia Tech played, she took at least 14 threes in every single one of them. It's like, wow. I mean, the 3-point contest of the point guard position, that's for sure that game will be. But it'll be interesting to see. I imagine Gabby will be given that assignment. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. And it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I'll say that. And their third player that's returning is a Kayla King, which, okay, you look at her like counting stats, her points per game, and it's not that remarkable. But at the same time, she had the highest offensive rating of any player on Virginia Tech last year. And it's not like a case where like she's shooting layups, which I think some players can build up that offensive rating just on getting wide open layups. She's taking on high volumes of 3-point attempts, so a really efficient player, a really good glue piece. Like, that's a really solid returning core if you're a Virginia Tech fan to be excited about. And on top of that, they bring in 2 transfers from Big Ten programs, 2 players who are honorable mention all Big Ten. Matilda Eck from Michigan State. Just looking here, it's like a 95% a 95% shooter from the free throw line, a 39% shooter from the 3-point line on high volume for Michigan State last year. So, a knockdown shooter, a really good piece to fit around a player like Kitley at 6'6". And on top of that, they bring in, now this is my naivete coming into play. Virginia Tech's official site listed her name as Rose Michaud, but Sports Reference and most other sites have her name as Alana Michaud, so I'm not sure which is right, so I'm just going to go by what Virginia Tech says. So Rose Michaud, a player who was who played for Minnesota last year, 4th in the Big Ten rebounding last year, listed at 6'2", a really interesting front line combination. Like, you're talking about like an old school kind of matchup where you have 2 post players on both sides, Stolke, O'Grady, maybe Goodman, Michaud, Kitley going against each other. And a lot of other players around them can shoot. So it's kind of a traditional matchup in that sense. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. They're really going to test their front line. It's going to be a great test for Iowa. And on top of that, like, you look at the recruiting class, there's no like five stars in Virginia Tech's recruiting class. There's a lot of players rated in that 60 to 100 range on ESPN from this incoming freshman class. So they have talent on the bench, even though it'll be young. I think Iowa's going to have more experience off the bench. It'll be interesting to see who has the advantage there. But the point being, like, you look at Virginia Tech's starting lineup, I think it's pretty self-explanatory that's going to be their starting lineup, although I don't know for sure. It might change. But that's a really good starting lineup. You're talking about like 3 players from last year are all really good players, and you add 2 players who are good enough to mention in a really good Big Ten conference. That's a really solid starting 5 along with a talented freshman class. It's going to be a really big challenge for Iowa. Looking at last year, just looking at their offense rating. So last year, on WarrenNolan.com, he has their offense rated at 20th in the nation. What was their defense rated? Their defense was rated 38th in the nation on Warren's site. So it's a balanced team. Not necessarily tilted too much either way, offense or defensively. So again, you're going up against a good balanced team who's going to test you in a variety of different ways. It's a really fun matchup. I'm really looking forward to see it in person. I can't wait. It's going to be a good one. So that's really all I have to say. I'll catch you around.